Get ready to meet a musician who has shared the stage with some of the biggest legends in music history. From backing Joe Cocker and Percy Sledge to opening for Bo Didley, Styx, and Little Richard, John Carney's career reads like a rock and roll Hall of Fame. Born in Panama City, Panama, John's musical journey has taken him across both genres and continents, making waves from the US to Europe. Today we'll dive into his incredible story and what it's like to play alongside the greats. Welcome to the Panama Podcast, From Dreaming to Doing. I'm your host, Melissa Darnay, an American who's been living her someday, every day since 2012. Get ready for a weekly dose of Panama sunshine and inspiration, from hilarious expat adventures to insider tips on living, investing, and having a blast in Panama. Curious to learn more? Go to choosepanama.com and snag your free copy of Panama Uncorked. John, you were born in Panama City. What was your early life like growing up in Panama?
Well, my father's from the U.S., but he came to Panama in 1940. He was 19 years old. He had met my mom in L.A., so he came here because he wasn't giving her up. And
your mom's Panamanian?
My mom is Panamanian, from a very well-to-known family in Panama, the Diaz family, Diaz Calqueye family. And when I was born, we lived with my Panamanian grandmother. My grandfather had already passed away. Until I was about 6, when we moved into the Canal Zone, Balboa, and where I went to American school, St. Mary's grade school and Balboa High School for high school.
I just did a countdown, and St. Mary's is in the countdown. Check it out here.
When I was 9, I was visiting the U.S. and we were going through a department store. This was pre-malls. And the electronics shop had TV on, and there was these 4 guys with hair playing instruments, and the girls were going crazy. And the music was wonderful, and they were called the Beatles. And I looked at that for a while, and I went, you know what? Because I wasn't athletic. I was a bit of a bookworm. Wasn't, popular. I was just an average sort of kid. I said, I'm going to do that.
Oh.
Took me a few years to realize you also need talent, but but I just grinded it out and in determination, because I really wasn't musically inclined. I was no musicians in my family whatsoever, but I just stuck with it, and got me started. Then all through high school, I played locally in the Canal Zone, and it was wonderful because every town had a teen club. Every military base had a teen club. And I was booked solid every Friday and every Saturday, private parties, sometimes jobs in the Panama City. So for a teenager, I was making a lot of money.
And do you play multiple instruments?
I started on the guitar at home, but then to get into a band, they needed a bass player. So I said, okay, I'll play bass. And I played bass for about 16 years. Towards the end, I started transitioning back to the guitar professionally.
Okay.
Because I always played at home, and then I started teaching guitar and bass in music stores and privately. And towards the end, I was like, wow, I'm in this band, and I'm a better guitar player than the guitarist. So, so I said, I got the opportunity in Texas to play with a country and western band. And they were thrilled to have me, and I thought it was terrible, but they were happy, and I got to cut my teeth in the guitar playing with them, and I've kind of never looked back.
Great.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't know this, John, but you have quite an illustrious family history. There are books here dedicated to his family. Can you give us just a 30-second deep dive into your family?
I'll try. My grandfather was President Domingo Diaz, who was the president responsible for the construction of the first terminal in Tucumán.
The airport.
Tucumán Airport. Before that, Panama had to use Albrook Air Force Base. And he said, no, we need our own international airport. We're in the country, and, So...
do you know what year that was?
Well, he was president in 48, so shortly after 48. His administration got that through.
And that was visionary thinking at the time.
Yeah. And another one, there was a bill to build a hospital with 50 beds. And he said, no. He says, we need a hospital with 500 beds. Mm-hmm. And he got a lot of blowback on that, but he got it through. And in a matter of a couple of years, it was full.
I bet.
Yeah.
Wow. How amazing.
Yeah. Right.
And now tell me a little bit more. You've got a big book here.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you one more story about my grandfather, okay? He built this ginormous house, sort of with French architecture, with the French architect for his wife, whose father was from Paris. And when he became president, he opened the gates, he opened the doors, and the poorest Panamanian could come and walk up to his front door, knock on the door, and ask to see the president. And he had no security,
Amazing.
no guards, no, what they call them, bodyguards.
Right.
He had a German Shepherd and a chauffeur, okay? So the reporters asked him, why do you do this? It's dangerous. He said, because the voice of the people is the voice of God. And he wanted to be connected with the people.
That just gave me chills. Yeah. Literally, I have goosebumps.
Thank you.
How amazing.
Yeah. And so he was one of probably the only honest president Panama's had. Corruption is a sport here. Okay. Yeah. So I'm very proud of him, and the whole family is. And, that's been one of the things that I have to live up to.
Absolutely. That's a great way to put it, that you have to live up to that every day.
Yeah.
Because with privilege comes responsibility.
That's right. Yeah.
You said something funny to me before the camera started rolling. He said that he was born with the silver spoon in his mouth, but...
I got rid of it with rock and roll.
That's a great line. I have to steal that somewhere, but I wasn't born with a silver spoon, nor do I have rock and roll.
Yeah. It doesn't go with rock and roll, at all. Yeah.
So, okay, briefly, let's talk about this. So you're part of the grand families of Panama.
Right. Principally the Diaz family and the Quelqueye family. But through marriage, we're related to my Tio Roberto's wife was an Arias. Nunfo Arias, big name in Panamanian politics. He was the one who was ousted by Torrijos in '68.
Okay.
And by marriage, we're related to the De la Guardias and the Fabrega and quite a few families. If you ever go to the Union Club, you can see them all.
And the Union Club really is the social club in Panama. It took me years to get invited, but now I've been there several times.
And I'm like the only one in my family that's not a member because it doesn't go with rock and roll. Yeah.
Okay, so moving on from your illustrious history in Panama, tell us about your move to the U.S. and how that impacted your musical journey.
Well, I went to Albuquerque, New Mexico when I was 3 days before my 19th birthday. And the reason I went there is because I had no U.S. relatives. Both my American grandparents had died. My father was an only child, so I had no aunts or uncles And I had an older brother who was teaching at a school just outside of Santa Fe.
Okay.
And so that's the only family I had. So he could sort of keep an eye on the rock and roller. And
The bad boy.
The bad boy. But I really cleaned up because I was going to be dedicated to studying music. I majored in music, got a bachelor's degree in fine arts performance. Okay. And I really did well in school because I was really eager to learn more about it.
Okay.
Kept on playing there. It was a little difficult at first because I was underage till I was 21.
Oh, you couldn't play in the bars?
Couldn't play in the bars. I got into several bands. We played like high school dances and did a lot of... I had one band that was sort of a jazz rock fusion, and we rehearsed constantly. We wrote all our own music. We played once or twice at the university, but that was the longest period of my life that I went without performing publicly.
Okay. And how did earning your bachelor's degree in performing arts shape your approach to music?
I will tell you. Your average street musician, be it country or rock, not quite so much in jazz because a lot of jazz musicians study, okay? But your street musicians don't study music. They learn to play an instrument, and they go out and they play country, they play rock, they play pop, whatever they do. When I was in college, I studied classical guitar and I studied the upright bass. And when I was upright bass, I was playing with the school orchestra. Mm-hmm. And they're playing the great classical pieces, Tchaikovsky and Mozart and Mendelssohn, and we're performing these pieces, and I'm sitting there and I'm astounded because there's all these instruments, and the instruments would weave in and out. And one of the courses I had to take was orchestration, and I went, wow, you can change the color of the music by adding and subtracting instruments. The rock band, for instance, you have drums, plays all the time, bass player plays all the time, the guitar players play all the time, if you have a keyboard player, he plays, the singer sings, and it's the same four instruments constantly. So when I I was playing and I had a say in what I was doing, saying, let's vary the instrumentation, have the guitar and the keyboard drop out, have the singer singing to just the bass and the drums. Then when they come in, there's an impact. Okay, it's called orchestration. We don't have 80 instruments, but we can do something with what we have.
Right.
And I've always tried to apply that. And I really didn't get a chance until 2000 when I made my own band. And we were taking pop songs and we were playing them instrumentally. We had a wizard on the violin, and we would do our own arrangements of them. And people would come and they would sit and listen rather than just talk among themselves.
Right.
And they didn't dance very much because it was listening music.
Okay.
So that had a big impact on me right there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I studied music from about 10 years old to 18. So I
Wow.
played flute and piccolo.
Oh, how nice.
And I was the drum major in high school.
Oh,
A little bit of music, but then I stopped.
okay.
You've played so many genres: country, rock, R&B, blues, Latin, jazz, world music, and classical. Do you have a favorite, or do you enjoy blending them all?
I enjoy blending them all. My joke is I'm musical ADD. Okay, if I play one kind of music for too long, initially, when if it's new, I'm enjoying it. I'm learning something new, but after a while, I get tired of it, and I want to go on to something else. Okay, which is another reason I put my band together in 2000. Is we play a little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's what I love. And what I'm doing now with play solo is I can play whatever I want with my guitar.
That's
and
right.
Instrumentally, because I can't sing a lick. But I vary it up, and the people so far are responding well to it, so I'm not going to shake that tree too hard.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And how do you adapt to the different styles you play? And how does each genre influence your performance?
Number one, my father was a linguist, and he was world class, and he could hear a language and absorb it and sound like a native speaker.
That's a gift.
Yeah, he taught Spanish, French, and Portuguese. Did translation for the U.S. government, Panamanian government, the CIA, Pentagon, the Vatican. Okay. When he went to Europe, he talked in German in Germany, and they thought he was German. Italian in Italy. Didn't matter where he went. All right, he sounded. So that was another thing I had to live up to, and I said, if I'm going to play country, I don't want to sound like a rock player playing country, because I've heard that, and it's horrible. It's like this person who can't pronounce,
It's like me speaking Spanish.
Okay. We won't go there. All right. But sometimes, yeah. So you want to sound like a native musician.
Right.
And play each genre the way it's supposed to be played.
Right.
However, it is an influence because sometimes I'm playing a rock song, I can throw some country into it. And, the people who are paying attention will notice that. Or especially when I'm playing solo guitar, I can play a song by the Beatles, and I play it like as if I was a flamenco guitar player.
And that is such a good analogy, because being an American who really only knew English, living in a country that speaks Spanish, I understand American Spanglish way better than I understand native Spanish. So the same person that I understand completely when they speak English, I have a hard time understanding as much when they speak Spanish. So that analogy was perfect, because I get it. If you're playing like a native, it's a completely different sound than someone who's butchering it from something else.
Right.
Now for the good, juicy stuff that everyone's been waiting for. What was it like to work with such legendary artists like Joe Cocker and Percy Sledge?
Start with Joe Cocker. When I was still in Albuquerque, I was in college, and this guy comes up to me. He says, "You're a musician." And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "You're putting a band together." He goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "I'd like to be in it." And so I met him. His name was Daryl Keys.
Okay.
He played sax and he sang.
Okay.
His older brother was Bobby Keys, who's played with every major rock star there is, including the Rolling Stones for decades. The solo on the song Brown Sugar, that's Bobby Keys.
Okay.
Okay, he's recorded with George Harrison, Tina Turner,
That
Otis
one, Pour Some
Redding.
Sugar on Me?
No, the Brown Sugar by the Rolling Stones. It's a rock and roll, but it has
Okay.
a saxophone solo. And Leo Sayers, Otis Redding, Tina Turner, Eric Clapton, just gads of famous, musicians.
Okay.
Well, his younger brother sounded just like him on the saxophone, and he sang. and he was a good-looking guy. So he fronted the band, and we were super popular. And then Bobby would come to visit his brother, and he would bring famous people with him. Nicky Hopkins, the piano player for the Stones. One time he came for 2 weeks with Joe Cocker, and they stayed in our apartment. Okay, so Joe Cocker had my room for 2 weeks. Okay, and it was a lesson because a life lesson. This guy had so rich, and yet he would wake up at the crack of noon and drink cold whiskey for breakfast, and then they did illicit drugs to the tune of several $1,000s each a day. And he was so messed up, and I said, "There's no way he's going to sing tonight at the club." And then he'd show up, terrible shape. He'd get on stage, and he was a monster musician. Just sang, and he had a big voice, a huge voice. And he did that naturally. And I was like, I couldn't believe it the first few times, But it was amazing. So the lesson to me is like, money doesn't buy happiness.
That's right.
Sometimes it rents it, but
right.
Yeah, he was not in a good place. And so that was one thing. And then the other was Percy Sledge. Percy Sledge, polar opposite, total gentleman. I was playing with this band, Big Otis Show Band, and 9-piece band, sometimes brass, keyboards, the whole 9 yards. Great musicians. The trombone player played 9 years with Dr. John. Okay, we had a black lady drummer that toured with the Temptations throughout Europe. We had really monster, great players. And he sent, this was back in the 90s, he sent the cassette tape of his songs. We learned them, we wrote them out, practiced them, went on stage, do a sound check, and he wanted to rehearse with us. And we played the first song, and halfway through he stopped it. And I said, "What did we do wrong?" And he goes, "Otis, I'm happy. You got a great band." And we went that night and did the show flawlessly, perfectly. We opened for him with Otis, and then Otis turned the band over to Percy Sledge. Packed house. It was at a college venue. And great show. And he was so kind to everybody, so sweet. He had his touring bus, and we got to go in there and say hello to him, and just complete, super well-dressed, suit and tie, and just a real gentleman.
Oh, that's wonderful. You have performed in some iconic places like Atlantic City, Cancun, and New Orleans. Do any of the performances stand out?
Oh, a lot of them do, but the ones that stand out, among the ones that stand out, Cancun was a lot of fun. I did a performance in Houston with a symphony orchestra, not the Houston Symphony Orchestra, and I did 3 songs with the orchestra, all by Carlos Santana. Wow. And that's the only time in history Carlos's music has been done with a symphony orchestra.
Wow, I bet that was amazing.
That was exciting, nervous and exciting at the same time.
Are there recordings of that?
YouTube videos. If you go to John Carney 100 on YouTube, I have my own channel, and you can put in Europa, which is one of the videos, Smooth, and Oye Como Va. There was, on that same show, one of my students who really did well, he got a PhD in classical guitar, and he teaches at and I can't remember for the life of me what the name of it is, but he's the head of the music department and teaches at some university out west. He came and he did a classical guitar concerto, and just, it was beautiful. And then he had started on the electric guitar, and I told him, everybody plays electric guitar, learn to play the classical guitar, and it did him well. And so he got on stage and the Oye Como Va, and we played electric guitars together.
Amazing.
So that was fun.
I'll put the link for those in the show notes so you can look at those.
Yeah. There's over 100 videos probably of me on that channel. So,
oh, wonderful.
Yeah. Yes.
John, what was it like to open for legends like Bo Diddley, Styx, and Little Richard?
Little Richard was fun. His band was fun. The venue was Green Hall in Green, Texas, but Greune, which is the German spelling for green.
Right, I know exactly where that is.
You know exactly where that is. Okay, a lot of Central Texas, a lot of German towns,
right.
Bronzeville's and Fredericksburg, where there's a wine region. The Green Hall is where George Strait got his start.
Okay.
And we were one of the first, because the Otis band was mostly black members.
Okay.
It was me and the trombone player, occasionally the drummer. We had several drummers come and go. But one of the first black artists to play in that, and it didn't go over well with some people in the town. But we got through that, and we had a great show. The Bo Didley, that was fun. There was a cowboy with a white hat and a black T-shirt that opened up for us. Then we played. It was a Southern rock band. Then the Something Brown Band, the band that did On the Dark Side from the movie Eddie and the Cruisers, they were next, and then Bo Didley. And Bo Didley used them as his backup band.
Okay.
Well, we were backstage. The cowboy had already sung, and he had a great voice, and he sang mostly songs he'd written. So we were backstage. We were listening to Bo Didley telling jokes, okay, and noshing and drinking a little bit. And he was sitting in the corner all by himself, kind of lonely. So I went over to talk to him, and I said, "Hey, man, you have a great voice. What's your name?" And he pulled out his pick, and it said, Clint Black.
Oh, my gosh.
All right. He was totally unknown. I mean, he played around Houston a bit, you know. And he gave me his pick that had his name on it. "Oh, Clint." I said, "You should form a band." He said, "I'm thinking about it."
Wow.
Well, years later, I got a call to play bass, because I still would take a call to fill in, you know, if the bass player's sick or something. I did that several times. And I played with this guitar player who was phenomenally good, and the drummer was good. Well, the guitar player called me up, and he said, "We're forming a band with Clint Black. We'd like you to play." And I said, "But I'd be playing bass, and I really want to play guitar." So I turned it down. Next thing I knew, he was
super famous.
Super famous, yeah. But I'm glad I did in the long run, because I would not have met my wife if I had been on the road with Clint Black.
And how did you meet her?
I was playing with Big Otis. No, I was playing in the band before Big Otis. And she came out to this club where he played all the time, but I was playing instead. And it was Halloween weekend. And I saw her walk in, and I was just devastated. She was so beautiful. And she was out of my league, and I knew I didn't have a chance. And I told a friend of mine's girlfriend, I said, "Boy, I would give anything to go out with her." Well, she went over and met her, and they hit it off. They'd known each other all their lives. And then she brought me over to meet her. And she had just come out of a divorce, so she was a man-hater. Shot me down. And, you know, but anyway, by circumstance, happy accidents, I got to go out with her the following week. And the rest is history.
And what year was that?
That weekend was Halloween weekend of '89.
Okay.
And we got married in the courthouse June of '90.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank
24 years.
34.
34 years.
34 years.
I'm not a math major.
Yeah.
Amazing. Congratulations.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Tell us about your experience touring Europe with Swiss blues guitarist Andy Edgert. What did you take away from that?
Well, Andy was a great guy. He amazing showman, tours all over Europe, 9 months out of the year, 10 months out of the year. Nationally recognized by the Swiss government as their national blues artist. Oh. Okay. So he always comes to Panama. He came for years to perform at the Bokete Jazz and Blues Festival. And as we got to know each other, we started doing more shows around Panama, Bokete and here and in the city. I mean, in Coronado, that's where I spoke. That's where I live. And then when we went to Europe, we played a number of dates in mostly Switzerland. And the best one was there was a hotel that backed up to one of the mountains, the Alps. And the bar you went downstairs and into the mountain. It was, I don't know if it was man-made cave or a natural cave.
What city in Switzerland?
Lax, Laax, I believe. It's a ski place in the wintertime. And we went into the mountain, and we were playing blues in a cave. Oh. It was so cool, literally cool. Wow. It was spring, but it was still cold.
Yeah.
Then we went to the mighty, mighty country of Liechtenstein, and we did 2 shows there. And one was outdoors, and it was cold. Oh, so cold. I didn't think I'd survive it. But the beauty going up the mountains. And then I said, we had a friend from Germany. She was driving us. And I said, pull the car over. I want to take a picture. And I couldn't see the valley because we were above the clouds.
Wow.
Yeah, I was giddy. You know,
how amazing.
It was beautiful. Yeah.
I've heard music performed in a wine cellar. I'm very into wine.
Yeah.
So, where they store the wine when it's still in the barrels.
Yeah.
And that to me is the closest thing I can imagine of what that would have sounded like. And I bet it was just awe-inspiring.
Yeah. It's, and playing with Andy, who was great blues artist. The thing with Andy, though, he's like polar opposite of me. He plays blues, and then he plays blues, and sometimes he plays blues. So, on one of his trips, he sat down, I forgot what it was, he played a rock song, some Led Zeppelin thing or something, or AC/DC. You go, see, I can play rock.
Oh.
He just won't.
Now, I know that one of your songs, Spanish Rain, hit #1 in the world music chart for Panama. How did that make you feel?
Oh, I was tickled pink. I was, walking on air.
I bet.
And it was sort of a vindication because I had to fight for that song. I wrote it quite a while ago, in the late 90s. And I would submit it to the band. I said, can we do the song I wrote? And they go, and couldn't get them to play it. I did it once, I think with one band. And then in 2000, I started recording with a pal of mine, Daniel Blanchard, who's a really good keyboard player and has a beautiful voice. But we decided to do an instrumental album, sort of a world music, smooth jazz. Mm-hmm. And we put it on there. He helped me finish it. He wrote a middle section for it. And we had a ton of fun writing songs and arranging them and then recording them. And but not only was it #1 in 2014, but during the lockdowns, during COVID, it hit again. In 2020, It was #1 again. I guess people had something,
Comes back around.
Yeah, locked in their house and listening to music.
Right.
So, yeah.
And you mentioned the Bokete Jazz Festival.
Right. Yeah.
I know you've been taking part of that for quite a while.
I went in 2014, and I got invited to sit in with some of the people, because the thing about the Bokete Festival that was unique was the jam sessions at night. Because there's festivals all over the world, and the bands come and play. Mm-hmm. And some of these bands, they tour months out of the year, and they play the artist's songs, and the same songs at every venue. Mm-hmm. But at Bokete, after the concert, they jam, and they get to play with other musicians, and they get to play music they don't normally play, and they're super excited, and there's an energy.
I was about to say that. I bet there's an energy.
And a vibe. To a lot of people, that was the best part of the festival.
Right.
Was the jam sessions, the
right.
electricity in the air.
And now you go every year.
Well, they've stopped having it. The COVID hit. 20 was the last one. Then they had one earlier this year at Buenaventura. Okay, but it wasn't the same. Part of the magic of the Bokete Jazz and Blues Festival is Bokete.
Right.
You have the beautiful mountain scenery and the climate and the great restaurants.
And the flowers. It's right around the Flower Festival.
Right. Another thing that's really special is you get to jam with great musicians who've been performing sometimes for decades, who've been nominated for Grammys or won Grammys.
Wow.
And one of the jam sessions, I've sat in with this group of musicians, and Jeff Lindsay, I think was his name, he's the author of Dexter, the TV series, and his wife is Hillary Hemingway, Ernest Hemingway's niece, and they're both authors.
Okay.
So he loved my music. He was a former musician himself.
Okay.
So we got invited to a private party at the lady who owns the Panamonte. She's passed away now. So we went to the house and we're jamming, and he's helping me carry my equipment in. I've got the author of Dexter carrying my amplifier for me. But and then he got up and he played a little harmonica with us, and it was just a special night. And things like that happen. They're just kind of magical, right? And we showed up expecting to be at a festival with jeans and T-shirts. She didn't have a dress. My wife, Karen, sitting right over there, didn't have a dress. We hauled down to David, and we found a dress, on the beautiful little dress for this was like $34, but it was like $1 million. And I put together what I had, best clothes I had, and it was just a magical night. And that kind of stuff happened during the festival. They have a new festival called the Nature and Music Festival, which is much smaller. But that's the way the Bokete Festival. It started with just a few outside bands, a few local bands, very small, and it just grew and grew and grew and grew.
And are they planning to do Buenaventura on a regular basis?
No, there's no plans for that at the moment. There's plans in March for the Nature and Music Festival, and I'll be performing with Kevin Leo, who's a operatic tenor from South Africa. Super famous there, and he did concerts in Europe, and he's living in Coronado at the moment. And so we're playing, and we're putting a band together behind him. The keyboard player lives in Bokete. His name is Richard Kalachi. He's toured with Frankie Valli. He's toured with, you could say he's a superstar, I think. And he's toured with Luis Miguel, who's definitely a superstar in the Latin world, okay, among many others, Melissa Manchester, a whole host of musicians.
Right.
And he's going to be the keyboard player. So it's going to be a good little band, and I'm looking forward to that. That's in March. I don't have the exact dates.
And interestingly, I met you through Greg Kitzmiller, who's an author. And one of the things, and click here to see Greg's interview.
Yeah.
One of the things Greg talked about was living in Coronado among all of these artists and how it just kind of sparks all of this creativity. You've just rattled off a lot of different names of people who we've all heard of, and they're all living in Coronado. What is it like to live there among all of this creativity?
We enjoy Coronado for Coronado. That's just an added plus.
Okay.
There's community there. We lived 9 years in the city. We did not know our neighbors.
Oh, interesting.
Until during the lockdown, I did a series of concerts. I had a little balcony in the front of the house. On Sunday evenings at 6 o'clock, I would go out there and set up my equipment and play for the neighbors. And they would video and put it on Facebook and stuff. And the neighbor, I could hear the next door. I was playing something romantic, Spanish, and I could hear her crying at the window next door. And I finally got to meet her, but it was right when we were leaving. So, but in Coronado, we meet all these people. We have such a community. It's amazing. And then the book club, they have their book readings and all of that. So they need a microphone and a system. So I volunteer for that. And in exchange, they feed me. That's a big plus. And I meet them and I listen to it. And it was sort of an inspiration. Not sort of. It was definitely an inspiration, because playing music is one joy.
Right.
But playing your own music is something else. And when I've been decades covering Beatles songs, Rolling Stones songs, country songs, right? And then I go out and I'm playing my music for all the audience.
Right.
Okay, that's an added plus. Yeah. And I hear these. When you're growing up, you go to school and you hear about the great books. All Quiet in the Western Front, The Grapes of Wrath, the great authors. And then I see these people that are writing books.
Right.
And I'm like, they're not going to be studied by high school kids unless they have a million-selling, number one hit book.
Right.
All right. But they're doing it for creativity, for their own personal enjoyment, and the enjoyment of others, the people that read their books.
Right.
All right. You don't have to be. So I get more out of playing for 6 people who are really listening to me and enjoying what I'm doing than playing for 60 people who are talking to each other and you're just sonic wallpaper.
Right.
I do that. I'm earning a living. All right. I'm getting my Social Security, but there's no reward in that.
And it's nice that you get to do it for yourself, and you're at this point in your life where you're choosing and you're getting to choose. And I know you play a lot of places in Panama, so you're playing in Coronado. I know you play at Frank's Place, which is one of my favorites. Yeah. Again, click here to see the interview with Angelo Keith.
Yeah.
Great
guy. Love Angelo.
I know, right? Yeah. And the food there is great. The ambiance. The minute I walked in, before I met anybody, before I tasted their food, I was like, this is my place. These are my people.
Yeah.
Where else do you play in Panama City?
In Panama City, I've also played another Italian restaurant called Salotos in San Francisco.
Okay.
It's much smaller.
Okay.
But and then the menu is not as extensive, but the food is really good. What I love about this couple is they love music. And the music is a priority for them. And they really support the musicians, and they try to get the best musicians they can in there, and jam sessions. And even if they have to dig out of their own pocket, they're not making any money, they just love music so much that hire musicians above and beyond what they can afford.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it is.
And where else in Panama City?
The Bench in Coronado is opening soon, right off of Avenida Balboa, middle of this month, provided they get their liquor license. That'll be another venue.
John, are there any artists who you would love to collaborate with at this point in your life?
I played in Bokete with Richard Kalachi, who I mentioned earlier. That was a joy. And I'm looking forward to playing with him again, and maybe looking forward to playing with him, just the two of us again. And he was talking about moving to Panama City from Bokete. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, which would make things easier. Bokete is a bit far away. I'm doing a show at the end of October, 25th, 26th, at Luna Rosa in Coronado, with a guy named Fufo, who's a stand-up comic. And he has a TV show on I can't remember which channel in Panama. He reports on sports, I believe.
Okay.
It's a sports talk show on television. And he's going to do a show on Friday night in English, Saturday night in Spanish.
Okay.
So I'm going to open for him. He's going to do his routine. And then we're supposed to play some songs together.
Okay.
I don't know what yet. We're going to get together on that.
Okay.
So I'm looking forward to that. It sounds like a lot of fun.
Sounds like great fun.
Yeah.
Coming back for a minute, what lessons have you learned working alongside so many talented artists over the years?
Professionalism.
Oh, that's a good one.
I've played in bands, and they will hire somebody who's phenomenally talented. I mean, way more talented than me. And I was lucky to be playing with them. But they would blow it because they're either not showing up on time,
Prima donna,
having an attitude, or having substance abuse, whether it be drugs or alcohol, and they just blow it. And you can't work with somebody who doesn't show up or isn't. You have to be sociable and get along.
That's right.
Right. So I always try to be uber presentable, dress my best. And I got in flack in Coronado, and they go, "We're all here in Hawaii shirts and shorts and sandals, and you show up in jeans and a shirt, right? What's going on?" And I go, "It's just me." Okay. Yeah, I always, be presentable. Show up on time. And it's such a chronic problem in Panama. Musicians show up after the time you're supposed to start playing.
Right.
And sometimes it's out of control.
Right.
And I've actually had Panamanians come up to me and say, I like your band, but what I really like is that you guys start on time.
That's right. Yeah. Punctuality.
So even the Panamanians appreciate it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Having such a long span career, what do you think has been your biggest challenge over, 3-4 decades?
56 years.
56 years. What's been your biggest challenge in the past 56 years, and how did you overcome it?
Wow. I want to say there's a biggest challenge. I had a number of small challenges.
Okay. Such as?
One thing that hurt me when I was young was there's people I wanted to play with, but I never did drugs. I was reading the sort of the history of the Jefferson Airplane, and Grace Slick wasn't the original singer. They had a lady named Signe, and she'd left the band because she was pregnant. And then they fired their original drummer because he wouldn't do drugs.
Wow.
And there'd be a lot of times I'd be the only one straight person in the band.
Wow.
And there was always a separation, okay? In some cases, they wouldn't even hire me. Yeah.
Wow, I wasn't even expecting that. I'm speechless. That is a big thing to go all those years, to go 56 years without doing drugs in an industry that
never
loves
did
their
drugs, not even smoked pot. I do enjoy a good glass of wine. Cheers, everybody.
Yeah, cheers.
Yes. Yeah, she said this wine wasn't special, but I'm looking at legs here, so okay. I can't say never. Almost maybe once or twice did I let the drinking get a little out of control. One time it was at a party that we weren't getting paid for, so it didn't really matter. But it never let it affect my playing.
And that goes back to the professionalism.
Yeah, that too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
Amazing.
Absolutely.
And so looking back at your career, is there anything that you wish you had done differently?
Started on the guitar sooner. You can't say I wasted 16 years on playing bass, but in a way, I should have gotten on the guitar sooner, and I should have started the solo career sooner.
Okay.
In the U.S., I was always a sideman playing with a band. They're the lead singer fronting the band, and I'm just the guitar player to the side, or before that, the bass player. Okay. Then when I made my band, I was the leader of the band, but I wasn't experienced with being a front man, which was difficult, because you need a little bit of charisma to be a good front man. All right. Then when I went solo, there wasn't even a band. It was all on me. And I went solo when I moved to Panama.
Okay.
And I started a little bit in Houston before I came down here. I was doing lunch at this Cajun restaurant and, getting my feet wet doing it. So, and it turned out to be a smart move because that's most of my jobs here are playing solo. And I have to front in English and Spanish. Okay. And then I have to decide, do I do English or do Spanish? Because there's some Panamanians or Colombians over here, and there's some North Americans and Europeans over there. Sometimes I'm all in English, sometimes I'm all in Spanish, sometimes I'm mixing it up. And, you heard me at Frank's. It's mostly Panamanians with a sprinkling of expats.
Right.
And so I spoke all in Spanish, pretty much, on the microphone. So that took some getting used to, because it's kind of like you have to switch a switch in your brain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, do you have your dad's linguistic abilities? Do you speak a lot of different languages?
No. Spanish and English, more English, because I lived 39 and a half years in the U.S., and my Spanish got very rusty. In the 12 years I've been back, I've picked, reacquiring it. So I still speak more English and Spanish. And then, thanks to my wife, I have a smattering of German.
German, okay.
Yeah. we speak Spanglish in the house.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. So one big question I've been wanting to ask you is, how do you maintain your passion? Being in an industry for 56 years, how do you still get up every day and say, wow, I love music?
Well, like I told you earlier, it augments my income. So that's a good incentive, because if I had to live on what I get, my Social Security, couldn't do it.
Okay.
Flat out couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I was a musician.
Right.
So I didn't have a 401k or paid vacations or any of that. So I socked away what I could. I had a few good years in the 90s where I made some, 6 figures. But the rest of the time I remember the first time I did TurboTax, and I looked at my income and it said, you're at the 51 percentile. Okay. I said, boy, I'm smack dab in the middle class. And so my Social Security is pathetic, really. So I still play, all right? And then what gets me motivated is challenges, all right? I have a degree in classical guitar, all right, with a minor in upright bass, which I don't play anymore. I could, but I play classical guitar, but I don't play it. So lately, in the last year, I get up and I practice classical pieces by classical composers.
Okay.
And my goal is maybe someday play a classical concert.
Okay.
Okay. But I got to really be sharp for that. So I don't always get to practice it because I get sidetracked. I said, I got to do this show, so I better prepare for that show. Now I got to do this show, I got to prepare for that show. Speaking of shows, I forgot a big one. You said shows that were highlights in my career. Back in July, the #1 Beatle tribute band in the world from Argentina, the Shouts, came and did a show at Ateneo Theater in Ciudad de Sever.
Okay.
And I opened for them in front of 700 people by myself with my guitar.
Wow.
And of course, I had to speak all in Spanish. And I tried to make my stage talk funny, so I had to throw in some jokes. I had to think of some jokes to put in there. And then I couldn't play any Beatles songs, so I had to pick my repertoire, my song selection carefully. And I opened for it, and people responded really well. It was very exciting to play for that, because they're not like they're dining at Frank's.
Right. They're there to
sitting
see.
there, and they're focused on me.
Right.
Right. It's like I said earlier, I'd rather play for 6 people. This was 700.
Wow.
Okay. And so I had to be spot on. And then they came out, and I went around the theater, and I sat next to Karen, and I got a kick listening because they sounded just like the Beatles. They changed their outfits 4 times. They had a big movie screen behind them playing Beatle movies and videos, only they inserted themselves with CGI, their faces, their bodies instead of the Beatles.
Wow.
Yeah. They played the exact same instruments, the exact same model, color, everything. They sounded like the Beatles. They moved like the Beatles. They practiced, all right. And so I'm enjoying the concert, and I looked out of the corner of my eye, and I see Karen, and I'm going, wait a minute, she's 16. And she's screaming like a teenager, just like, She was transported back to her childhood. And I was like watching the Beatles and watching my wife, that was as much of a show. Right in their third encore, I said, my guitar is backstage, and 700 people are going to be walking this way towards me. So I left early. They were still singing the song, went up the stairs, and I'm standing behind the curtain. And John Lennon looks at me, and he goes, come here. And he calls me out. And I said, what do you need? And he goes, sing harmony with me. Oh. So luckily I knew the syllable. Na, 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 na. And so here I am, and I'm not a singer, but I'm singing with like the next thing to the Beatles. And that was fun. I was wired. I was up till 3:30 in the morning.
Wow.
Yeah, we went to a restaurant. We shut it down. And they shut at midnight. We were 1:45. We were still in there eating, drinking, and talking. And it was a fabulous night. It was like full circle because I started with the Beatles.
Right.
Right, when I was 9.
Right.
Yeah, and here I am. It's like, and I'll never be on stage with the Beatles, but this was the closest thing. #1 Beatle tribute band on the planet.
Wow.
It was very exciting.
Yeah.
And that happened just this year.
And
so I'm saying, what could happen next year?
exactly. And people ask me all the time, because I'm in real estate, they ask me, well, if I move to Panama, what is there to do? What is there to do, see, enjoy?
Yeah.
And this is a great example of something that you can see in Panama that you may not be able to see in Dallas, Texas, or San Francisco, California.
Yeah. Well, they have toured the U.S. and Europe. Yeah. But I mean, you do. In January, you have the Jazz Festival in Panama City. And big name people like Herbie Hancock's band, Wayne Shorter. That's what I was trying to remember. A number of super famous jazz musicians come to that. And it's all over the city. They have concerts periodically that come to Ateneo or to the Rod Carew Stadium. And then local venues for music. You have the casinos. Of course, you have all the beaches, and then 365 days a year. All right. In the U.S., you have to wait for summer in most of the places,
right,
to go swimming. You can go to the beach, but you can't get in. To me, I grew up here. It's like, what's the point?
Right, right.
And
here it's summer all year long.
Exactly. Yeah, and a nice summer.
Right.
It's not. Yeah, I lived in Houston in the summertime.
Yeah, that's not nice.
No.
That's why I moved to Panama. I was living in Dallas.
Okay, so yeah. Houston's worse. Dallas doesn't have the humidity Houston has.
Not that Houston has.
No, it's a lot of fun. And I have to work a little harder for the gigs in a sense because there's more venues. Like I lived in Houston. There's a lot of venues to play. The pay is better. But the gigs were shorter here. I just played 2 hours. In the U.S., I was playing 4.5 hours a lot of times.
Wow.
And at my age, I appreciate the shorter hours.
And I'm glad you brought that up because looking forward, you're not getting younger.
Right.
How do you see your musical career? Is it going to end, or are you just going to keep playing until God takes you?
I think about that a lot. I'm going to be playing for quite a while, God willing. Okay. What I'd see myself doing a little bit, and I've already started to do it, is maybe like emceeing shows, getting some musicians together and having events with different bands. And I'm the common denominator.
Okay.
All right. Maybe I play with several bands or I present or I book a band someplace and I'm presenting the band to I'm not necessarily the featured artist.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
And using my connections in that regard and bringing music to the people.
Do you see more and more venues like restaurants having musicians? Is that increasing, decreasing, or staying the same?
I think it's increasing. The new mayor has promised to make Panama a #1 tourist center destination for Latin America. So he's been doing a lot of improvements in the city. As more tourists come, there'll be hopefully more venues to perform. I have no shortage of places to play. All right, I'm blessed in that. What I see decreasing is venues for bands.
Okay.
Okay, #1 is that it's hard for a restaurant to afford 1 or 2 musicians, much less 4 or 5.
Right.
Okay. #2, I was looking at the Spotify top 400 songs. It's like the new Billboard 100.
Right.
The top 400 songs in Billboard, 3 were bands. The rest were single artists. Lady Gaga, pretty girl with the blonde hair.
Taylor Swift.
Tay-Tay. Yeah, So single name, single artists.
Right.
3 bands, that's not even 1%.
Right.
And only one of them was from the 90s, Coldplay. The other 2 were bands I'd never heard of that were recent bands.
Okay.
So as time goes on, I see the way for young people is more individual artists.
Right.
Okay, which is a change.
Right.
Which is conducive for the restaurants to be able to afford somebody. It's like I'm opening for this entertainer who's a comedian, and so that's easy for a restaurant.
That's right.
Yeah.
John, we have talked about so many things over such a long period of time. If you could give advice to a new musician, whether it's a young musician or somebody new in Panama, what would that advice be?
Not to anyone specifically. What I see what Panama needs is more professional musicians. There's only but a handful of musicians in Panama that live off of music. And most of them have established a name for Sammy and Sandra, Oscar Avila, the accordion player. There's a great jazz piano player. He played with me twice at the Bokete Jazz and Blues Festival. Carlos Campos, his wife plays bass and sings. I think he doesn't have a day job. He just lives off of performing, and he performs constantly. But that's the exception. In the U.S., Canada, Europe, you have musicians who live playing musicians without a day job.
Right.
Okay, that hardly exists in Panama. One reason is there are no agents.
Okay.
All right. In the U.S., I have an agent and a half. I have one agent who books me all the time. Another one throws me a bone every now and then. Okay. And that's when are you coming back to the U.S.? I've got some jobs here and there,
Right.
So, and they gives me good paying jobs, and I'm glad to give him his commission. But there's none in Panama. There's some concert promoters. That's how I got the job opening for the Beatle tribute band. Because a friend of mine from Venezuela, not even Panamanian, has booked me into like the Hotel Riu and other places. He called me up looking for an opening act for these guys. So
calling all entrepreneurs, there's a hole in the market if you're looking for something to do.
Yeah, Panama desperately needs agents and to work with these bands, and the bands need to work with the agent.
Okay.
That's the bit that they. A lot of musicians get together and they'll play somewhere, and then they'll never play again. It's not really a band. That seems to be par for the course. To have and that's one thing I love is I have a group of musicians, the same musicians, and we develop a sound that goes hand in hand with that orchestration.
That's
thing.
right.
When you get a band and they instinctively know what each other's going to do, and you have a tightness, and you create a distinct sound. There's bands that they say they play a song you've never heard of them, but as soon as you hear the music, you know that's that band.
That's right.
Yeah.
John, thank you so much for joining us today. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
My website has everything. JohnCarneyMusic.com. Very simple. JohnCarneyMusic.com has my calendar for each month, my venues where I'm performing. Has links to purchase my music.
Okay.
Okay. I have several CDs. The World Music CD, GSP, which stands for Global Sonic Positioning. Okay. You find your way around the planet by music.
Oh, interesting.
There's a map of the world and the numbers, and each number corresponds with a song, and you're supposed to sonically take you to different places. I have a Christmas CD, but it's so beautiful. It's all the traditional Christmas songs.
Okay.
There's no secular songs. And it's all except for the very last song. It's all super mellow, almost classical. And I call it a Christmas Eve CD because it's mellow. The last song rocks out. I couldn't help it. We ended with Joy to the World, and then we segued into Joy to the Band. Okay. So, churches in the U.S. would buy the CD and they would put it on, and then you'd see the music minister running to turn it off before the last song came on.
That's funny.
Yeah, it was funny.
Thank you so much for joining us for this incredible conversation. If you enjoyed today's episode, please give it a like. If you want to get in touch with John, we'll put all the information in the show notes. John, thank you so much for joining us. This has been such an incredible conversation. If you enjoyed today's episode, please say what you enjoyed about it in the show notes. We'd love to hear from you. And again, all of John's information is going to be down below. Until next time, cheers.
Cheers.